Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 27. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation, as we get ready for week number 3 in this showdown between two of the 9 undefeated teams in the NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Los Angeles Chargers. Pittsburgh having their home opener at Acrisure Stadium, looking to go 3-0 for the first time since 2020. Got a great show today. Great guest later on covering the Chargers. That's Daniel Popper. We'll talk to him, get his insights on LA here in just a bit. But Dave, how you doing?
Happy Friday. I keep wanting to call them the San Diego Chargers after all these years. Still do. It still takes some used to getting calling them the Los Angeles Chargers. But get your hot dogs ready, Alex. It should be a fun matchup on Sunday at Acrisure between these two teams. And I think we got a lot to get to today, don't we?
We do. Jam-packed show today. And I'm the same way or similar way. I have had the worst thought of like they're playing the Colts this week. I'm looking ahead. This is a trap game for me apparently, because I've had to stop myself repeatedly to stop saying Colts like they're playing the Colts this week. It's going to be next week against Indianapolis. So if I make that mistake mid-show, apologize in advance. I've made it almost a half dozen times already, probably writing articles this week. But yeah, lots to get into, Dave. More roster moves, injury report, coordinator corner, of course, making our picks as well. So let's just dive right on in with the latest roster moves. And this happened in typical Steelers fashion right after our show wrapped up on Wednesday. Pittsburgh had that open roster spot on their 53-man roster after placing wide receiver Ben Skoranek on injured reserve due to a shoulder injury suffered in that win over Denver. So they filled that by promoting and signing tight end Rodney Williams off the practice squad to the 53-man roster. A pretty sure sign that MyCole Pruitt will not play in this game. Williams, a capable special teamer. Not sure how much offensive snaps he'll see in this one, but he is now the 53rd member of this roster.
Yeah, a little bit surprising to see that, but obviously we've talked a bunch about Rodney Williams over the years and what he brings to this team as far as the special teams player, and I would imagine he's going to suit up. How big of a loss is MyCole Pruitt? Because obviously Rodney Williams, we talked about, I know, at least I gave early thought during the offseason. Is Rodney Williams going to get this, third tight end spot over MyCole Pruitt? But obviously has got further into this thing and out of training camp into the preseason. It made a lot more sense to me that MyCole Pruitt should be that guy. He obviously got the roster spot. Rodney Williams went to the practice squad. But they've been using MyCole Pruitt a lot in these 2 and 3 and sometimes even 4 tight end personnel groupings. So I'm just curious, we'll still see a lot of multi tight end situations here with the Steelers, maybe a little less 13 personnel than before, but how big of loss is MyCole Pruitt on offense?
There's an impact there. It's hard to really gauge for sure and quantify it exactly, but you talk about who were your top 2 inline traditional wide blockers. It's Darnell Washington and it's MyCole Pruitt. Freiermuth has been split out a lot and played to his strengths of playing more in space, not being that true inline guy. And Connor Hayward's really more of a Y off type who's not going to be in a 3-point stance on the line of scrimmage, and Williams is probably not going to be that guy either. So it could be limiting in some sense. We'll see if they do something like the 6 offensive linemen. If there's a week to do it, this week would make sense to do so with the Broderick Jones, just given his circumstances and maybe the need for some bigger inline blockers up front. I have not heard any chatter about that so far, so I'm not sure if that's part of the game plan or not. But yeah, for a personality and outfit like Pittsburgh that wants to run the heck out of the football and has done so, 77 rushes the first 2 weeks, first in the NFL, losing one of your core inline blockers, you'll feel that to some extent.
Yeah, you got a lot of things, and Good segue there because I did bring that up earlier in the week. Boy, I would throw Broderick Jones out there the first snap just to get his head in the game and see how that goes. And obviously, coinciding with not having MyCole Pruitt, I do wonder how much, if any, we will see that personally against this front. Especially with they are stacked. The Chargers are against across the defensive line. Obviously, two good edge rushers and all. So interested to see how that plays out. But we'll talk more about schematics here in a little bit. Talk about the how this injury report's shaking out for the Steelers this week.
Yeah, for Pittsburgh, it looks like they're going to be without MyCole Pruitt and Isaac Seumalo for at least another week with that pec injury on Thursday's report. And we'll get the final one Friday a little bit later today, recording this here in the morning. Players that practice in full on Thursday, TJ Watt, Najee Harris, and Larry Ogunjobi, they all got rest days on Wednesday, so no concern. There's some maintenance work there. Roman Wilson was a full participant for the second time since his ankle injury suffered in late July in training camp. Friday will be a really critical day for him. Remember, last week he practiced full on Thursday, then went limited Friday, did not dress or play against the Broncos. So can he be full back-to-back days if he can? We'll discuss, can he get a helmet for the first time in his career against the Chargers? Russell Wilson has been limited all week with the calf injury, really status quo on him, and there's really been no indication that things will be different this week. I still fully expect Justin Fields to be the number one quarterback, the starter, and Kyle Allen number two, which leaves Wilson as the emergency number 3 backup. Now, he says he's progressing, feeling healthier, doing more practice, but has yet to practice in full since that Thursday before week 1 when he re-aggravated that calf injury.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested with what happens with Roman Wilson here, especially if he goes full on Friday, and it feels like that's at least the expectation. Last week he went limited full and then limited on Friday. This week he's gone limited full and then to be determined on Friday. But then when you look at the things that we spend, or at least I spend way too much time on looking at the potential inactive list, I think we both agree, both expecting James Pierre to at least be elevated from the practice squad on Saturday. We'll see if there's any other elevations that go along with him, but let's assume if it's just James Pierre is the only one elevated from the practice squad on Saturday, that would force the Steelers to have at least 6 inactive players. We both agree Seumalo and MyCole Pruitt are going to be inactive. Russell Wilson inactive as the number 3 emergency quarterback. That's 3. Dean Lowry more than likely not to get the helmet this week, so that would make 4. Which one of these safeties, if not both, you would think at least one of these safeties between Terrell Edmunds and Jalen Elliott would be up. We kind of had a short, real quick conversation. Which is more likely of those two to dress? Would it be Elliott because of both of them can play the wing on punt return? Both of them are special teams players. Both of them are safeties. At that aspect, which one of those most likely to dress? And then, who potentially would be your 6 inactive if one of those two safeties dresses?
And if it's not Roman Wilson, then who would be that number 6? And I'd have to really kind of pour some more time into it. But yeah, it's hard to really know unless some other injury comes up here today that we're unaware of who that 6th guy would be if not Roman Wilson. But this team has also dressed 5 receivers each game, and if they sit Wilson, they only have 4, correct? And Pickens, right, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, and Scotty Miller.
Right. So which one of the two safeties are you leaning towards dressing?
It's really flip a coin. I would lean towards Jalen Elliott getting the hat, a little more proven on special teams in recent weeks, but it could go either way. Edmonds would be a more defined backup strong safety if something happened to Deshaun Elliott mid-game.
All right. So that'll be interesting to play out. And obviously all eyes will, Roman Wilson's the one to have the most eyes on the injury report on Friday, right?
Yeah, I think so. I really want to see if he can be full back-to-back days. If he's not, then I really doubt he would dress, for the game. If he's full, then that's going to give him a chance, although we'll have to see who would be that other maybe final inactive, assuming that Pierre does get the elevation Saturday.
All right. And is there a chance that they wait? We'll find out for sure on Saturday with the roster moves and all. I don't think MyCole Pruitt's out of the weeds just yet. We had that conversation on why Ben Skoranek went to the 53 and then went to the 53 and then went to IR. We'll know the seriousness of the MyCole Pruitt knee injury come Saturday, because whether or not he goes to IR or not on Saturday.
That's true. He could. I mean, they've already put Medikevich and Skoranek on IR, so you wonder if, Pruitt's able to avoid that, but potentially Logan Lee didn't go to IR until a Saturday, so that's always on the table as well. And obviously they promote Rodney Williams, and if you do that, there's probably some expectation that Pruitt's going to miss maybe more than one game. So we'll have to see what Saturday brings. From the Chargers side of things, the number one name to talk about from an injury standpoint is a big one, Justin Herbert, with that ankle injury. He's been, I think, very limited, had a ton of tape on his ankle. My expectation is he's going to play in this one. We talked to Daniel Popper here in a little bit, and he talked about Herbert's toughness. I don't think it's going to be enough to keep him out of the lineup, but there's going to be, I think, a very real question on the impact of the injury and his mobility or lack thereof. Structurally, do they change their offense some? Do they run more pistol? Kind of a Kirk Cousins week one type vibe. I wonder about that. So still want to confirm his status. It's not a slam dunk he's going to play. I think he will, but I think he'll be impacted by that ankle injury.
Yeah, I got to admit, I mean, as limited as the reports have been on him, I still expect him to suit up on Sunday here against the Steelers. But within that, I don't think you have to worry about him doing a lot of running, unless he absolutely has to. But that mobility in the pocket, he's going to be like a statue back there for the most part if he does play. I think that would impact the game plan to maybe not use him as much under center, if any. And then, as you said, pistol, shotgun, and they can obviously run their offense out of it. But then there's a whole issue: is he going to be able to get back and plant and use that ankle properly? Probably. They obviously don't want him to get hit and knocked around a bunch, much like Kirk Cousins in that first game either. So we'll be interested to see how he is. I would imagine he's going to be listed as questionable probably on the Friday injury report, but we're a couple hours out from that. So all we can do is speculate at this point.
And then elsewhere on their report, I know Bud Dupree has an illness. One of their receivers, Josh Palmer, has had an injury. Bosa's been limited, but Bosa's going to play in this one. We'll have to see on Dupree. Nothing else really pressing. Maybe one of their linebackers, Junior Colson, one of their rookies, may sit this one out. But they got Perriman and Henley, who can easily pick up the slack, and they've been getting the majority of the playing time anyway.
All right,
Dave, from the coordinator aspect, Arthur Smith and Teryl Austin speaking with the media on Thursday. Let's start with Teryl Austin. Probably nothing crazy that he said there. He did talk about Joey Porter's growth, not only as a coverage guy, but as a tackler. I think that's a really important point. I think even midway through his rookie season, Porter got much better as a tackler, and that's carried over. He's been more aggressive against the run. Austin, while saying that, did kind of mention the penalties, and 3 of them against Denver that has to get cleaned up, but there was some praise about Porter improving and being more than just a pure cover guy.
Yeah, look, if in today's NFL, you got to have obviously those corners that are not afraid to come up and play the run, or they've got to have the ability, obviously, to get eligibles down on the ground after the catch. And I think so far, man, you look at this Steelers defense as a whole, especially their corners in Dante Jackson had a big come up, make that big hit on that outside run last week. They have been showing that physicality. Really, the only thing negative with Porter, and it's been a bugaboo of his since he's come out of Penn State, or the penalties and all. I sure wish he'd wear the same color gloves as the opposing uniform, but he doesn't seem to think. Now, look, if you grab a hold of someone's shirt like he did with Sutton last week, and yeah, I think you even saw an instance of that with one of these tackles in that game last night in the Jets. You get that undershirt there and tug on it. It's hard, regardless of what color gloves that you had. And yeah, he had one of those with Sutton where he, it was very easy to see he had grabbed a hold of that undershirt there and all. But really, that's been the only knock on Joey Porter so far, as those penalties there. But have been impressed with the tackling as a whole by these guys in the secondary here.
Yeah, we'll The theme of today's show in the Steelers Chargers game is how much these teams mirror each other. Their philosophy, the coaches, the physicality, defensively. I think both DBs on each side tackle well. So it's really going to be whatever you say about the Steelers can apply to the Chargers and vice versa. Anything else from Teryl Austin that he said that caught your attention?
Just kind of the potential, especially in that Bronco package that the Steelers use, where so far we've been mainly seeing, I think, Herbig as the guy when they have three outside linebackers on the field, line it up inside. You got some great tackles this team's going to face in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt this week. Might it be a good idea to move TJ around a couple times in that package as the inside guy, and maybe get him on a more interior player and away from maybe some of those chips and all like that? We'll see. Teryl Austin's not giving away the secret sauce. He says, you think I'm going to give you some secrets right now? And then he laughs and he says, well, if that happens, you will see it and you can let me know the next time. So I don't know. Is he trying to tell us without telling us? I don't know. But it's not like, I mean, they run that package a ton during games, but when they do, that's at least something to watch for. If maybe Highsmith or Watt is used as that interior rusher.
They've had Highsmith inside once or twice in that Bronco look. You put Watt inside, you're still going to be in some congestion with the center, so you're avoiding the chip, but you're now in less space overall. So I mean, it's a different look, and to give rushers a different feel, that could be the benefit. But I don't know if you do that to avoid the chips, because you're still kind of facing a lot of congestion, whether you're going to play in the A gap or the B gap or out there on the edge. So we'll see. I'm sure they got some different ideas. They'll mix and match, and they've already kind of hinted at some of those different looks. They'll line up 3-by-1. They'll do 2-by-2 along the D line. So there's a lot of wrinkles and stuff I think that they can show in that Bronco package. I thought Austin's answer on Patrick Queen was a little interesting. He kind of downplayed some of the media and fan concern. He says, quote, I think PQ is doing everything we ask him to do, and those plays will come. I think Mike Tomlin always talks about doing the little things right, and making the ordinary play, and the splash will come. I think he's doing all of that right now. A splash will come in terms of that, but I think he's been great in terms of leading our defense in doing those things. I think our line's playing really well right now, end quote. And so he talks about the D-line dominating. That's why Queen's not getting in on a bunch of tackles. I mean, I think Queen is I think there's been a little overreaction to Queen's slow start. I know we'd all love to see him making super impactful splash plays to begin with. I do think he's missed a couple tackles against Atlanta. I thought his angles against the Broncos, against the run and out in space, were a little bit poor, but I'm not showing a ton of concern about Patrick Queen right now. I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, and look, this is a good week for him to really make a statement. This is a tooth chipper game, isn't it?
To use the Tomlin phrase.
These inside linebackers that you roll out for this game, whether it be obviously be Patrick Queen, and we'll see kind of the rotation between. This is a Landon Roberts kind of game too, isn't it? When he's on the field here, so big test, and we'll talk more about that here in a little bit of bottling up this Chargers running game here. But yeah, I mean, let's revisit the Patrick Queen early season performance after this game against the Chargers.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, flipping over to Arthur Smith. He thinks the dam's about to break. That's kind of been the theme from apparently the message from Arthur that the players have then talked about, because when we heard the players discuss it first, they're really close to busting out offensively, some big runs, some big pass plays. And when Smith was asked about that, he kind of quipped, good, they listened to me. So I assume that's been the message throughout the week, guys. We are so close. We just got to get over that hump. And I think that's probably fair. But as you like to say, don't tell me about the labor pain, show me the baby kind of situation. So I think it's a fair assessment, but ultimately they got to get that, dam to actually break.
Yeah. Don't tell me about the upcoming water flow. Just break the dam, look, they're going up against, these are two teams that really match up similarly on both sides of the football here. This is going to be the biggest test this offense has had, I think, so far. This is really a statement game for us to really know what the Steelers are and aren't. Well, we know a lot about the defense already, but they're going to be challenged with that Chargers running game, and obviously going up against a very a more experienced quarterback in Justin Herbert, albeit him banged up and all. But we got to score more points, and we do need to start seeing that damn break a little bit here. And you've got a couple of games up underneath your belt now, and you got a couple of games to watch of the opposing defense and get an idea of what you might be looking at there. So I am interested to see how much of that dam can get broken this week, and especially with Justin Fields making his third start. Mike Tomlin was asked earlier in the week, about using the quarterback more design runs. I think there might be an opportunity to do that more this week with Justin Fields. But this offense, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot, something that we've talked about the first 2 weeks here with the penalties and the negative plays, they at least have got to give them a chance to break the dam by staying out of second and long and third and long situations. And if they can do that, then we'll see how much of the dam can get broken.
Yeah, I want to see them be much better on first down than they were in the second half of the Denver game. I know penalties were a factor about one reason why the second half offense was so lackluster, but I just thought their first down success was really poor as well. And now you're in 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, and you're trying to dig out the rest of the way. That's not how Pittsburgh built. It's not how they are really made to succeed here offensively. So yeah, they're close. I mean, the offense made progress. I know the scoreboard does not show it against Denver, scoring less than he did against Atlanta, but they made progress. And the penalties, if they weren't there, you talk about a much different game had you not been called for that hold by Broderick Jones on that 51-yard completion, or the touchdown to Pickens on that pick that was very close, very debatable. Those things will totally change the scope about how this offense looks and what the stats say.
Schematically, it looks appealing on tape, a lot more than what we've seen the last 2-3 seasons. Obviously, they've got to execute better overall. And man, just the penalties and the negative plays, something that I've written about in my keys the first 2 games already. If they can just control that negativity, at least give them a chance on second and third downs. That's going to play a key role, obviously, in this game against a defense that's nothing to sneeze about.
Yeah, still trying to figure out exactly how good that Chargers defense is, but they're certainly a talented, tough group at the very least, and so they're not going to be a pushover unit. That is for sure. It was kind of funny to hear Arthur Smith talk about that Atlanta game and the first time that Chris Boswell came out for that 57-yarder when they called that at 3rd and 6 run to Cordell Patterson. Smith thought they were going to punt and just play field position, and he was a little surprised when he heard the call for Boss to get out there and hit that deep range field goal. So that is not that you want to settle for field goals. Pittsburgh's done that way too often. Boswell has 8 field goals through 2 games, but it does kind of give you a little more play and flexibility when you have a kicker like him who can hit from, basically now we'll call it 55 plus.
Yeah, they you kind of wonder with these one score, just get the ball in the end zone a couple of times this week. That would be a great talking point about that dam breaking by being able to score more than just one touchdown in a game. And that's all, obviously the offense has only produced that so far here. So yeah, we'll see how much that dam breaks.
Smith talked up Justin Fields in a lot of regards. The deep ball accuracy said it's been really good. I thought what he touched on, and we talked about this, I think, on the Wednesday show, is I think Fields has really played well from the pocket and played some more traditional, sometimes can be boring football. But what I've been impressed the most is not necessarily the arm talent, which is impressive, but we knew he was physically gifted. I think it's about his accuracy in some respect. His completion percentage is up 8 points from a year ago. I think some of the plays he's made, standing tall against pressure, not bailing as often. Talk about even some plays that got wiped out. A throw to Calvin Austin over the middle on a crosser for a would-be 3rd down conversion that got called back by a Dan Moore penalty. The 40-yarder to George Pickens. The throw was nice against Atlanta, but standing tall when Grady Jarrett's bearing down on you. So I think those are things that have impressed me, and Smith kind of made similar comments on Thursday.
Yeah, and obviously he's made a couple of plays with his legs. You might they could certainly probably use a couple more of those on Sunday against the Chargers. I thought, obviously you can go through all 22 of these first two games with a fine-tooth comb and find different plays, several which we've highlighted where you think the ball should have went here. But as far as the decision-making goes and playing within the offense, and I think that's the key here. I think what he's being asked to do on a down by down basis within the structure of what they're trying to get done offensively, he's executing. You obviously would like to see more explosive plays from this offense so far, and they've had a couple of wiped out by penalties, and you can excuse those obviously away at this point. The run game success, especially on early downs, just needs to be better, and that's not all on him. They need to block it up better, and we need to start seeing more of these 4, 5, 6, 7 yard runs on early downs in this game. But as a whole, I think he gets a passing grade. I think that's in so many words what Arthur Smith said on Thursday there. But once again, you're judged on your next game, and this is a big game for Justin Fields and the Steelers offense on Sunday.
It is big litmus test to see exactly where Pittsburgh is at. There was one quote I want to read in particular from Arthur Smith. He says, quote about Fields, "He's playing very smart football, situationally, understanding the plan, understanding the attack, and what we're trying to accomplish." And that is, again, it's fundamental. It's what every quarterback you would expect and hope and plan to do. But I think that's so important, especially when it's new OC and new quarterback. There was no prior relationship. Smith didn't handpick Justin Fields, etc. And just from the standpoint of, does your coach trust you to do the thing he's asking you to do? And that's kind of where things start. And that's how you build up, trust and confidence. I mean, execution and making plays is one thing. Obviously, it's paramount. But can you go out there and run the offense that we are trying to run? Here's the game plan. Here's the vision of how we win. Can you do that? And Pittsburgh's game plan and vision is obviously run the football, play, mistake-free football. Don't turn the ball over. Be a little risk adverse. Make the play when it's there. Take a profit when it's not. And I think that's what Fields has done so far. And that's a really good way to start building trust in that new relationship between Arthur Smith, between Justin Fields, and will kind of probably create some more flexibility down the road. But that foundation is in trust. Can you run what I'm asking you to run? I think Fields has done that 2 weeks in.
I agree. All right. Anything else from earth-shattering from Arthur?
No, I think that covers it pretty well. Just kind of a brief recap of the players speaking. Nothing crazy that they have said, but I do want to comment on Broderick Jones and some of the comments he's made to the media his second time speaking. He spoke post-game after that obviously terrible performance against Denver. And on Thursday, he was really accountable. He, basically said, I was terrible. If you play terribly like I did, you get pulled, and I got to be better and work on things going forward. So for being a guy that's 23, 24, I think he's been mature. I think he's been accountable. As frustrating as that play is, that is one promising sign that he's, I think, taking it the right way to hopefully bounce back.
And you and I talked about those initial comments that he made. I think it was just a young player meaning one thing and the words coming out of his mouth a little bit differently. And then obviously able, especially if you don't physically hear the interview, to twist them up contextually and all like that. And even Mike Tomlin was asked, why I didn't hear what he had to say, but I think that was just a guy trying to give the media answers to questions, that they posed him. I think it feels like he's handling this the right way. Although I think he kind of made it clear from a quote or two that I seen come out since then. He's just not a fan of being in a rotation. That if one guy is a starter, he should be the starter. And my main takeaway is he's not a fan of being part of a down by down or series by every other series kind of tackle rotation. Right? And I probably most offensive linemen around the league would probably agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, post game, I understood the comments he was making. I get how they could be interpreted in some, real negative connotation, but He probably, honestly, I think if players have a really bad game, in most cases, I wouldn't even advise them to speak to the media post game because it's so raw and the emotions can be running so high. You can get some, comments that you might want to have back. But I think Jones has been a professional. I think he's worked hard, watching him in training camp, after practice, working on taking extra sets, working with other guys, working with Darnell Washington on his pass blocking. Again, not giving up on Broderick Jones. I mean, his play has been poor. It's been a really tough, month, 6 weeks for Broderick Jones. No getting around that. It should be Fauton who's starting at right tackle, and he will, and Dan Moore at left tackle, and he will. But I think there's still some hope there for Broderick Jones.
Yeah, and look, this is a good reset period for him early on in his career. I was pretty impressed. You can't get too caught up with what these players put out on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. But he had a short little message that he posted on his Instagram account a couple of days ago, and it says, "Brick by brick, day by day, a win is a win." And that's really the mentality that he has to have right now. We don't know how many opportunities he's going to get in this game against the Chargers, but like I've stated several times, if it was up to me, man, I would roll him out there, snap number one as part of 13 personnel, as that 6 offensive linemen, and then just go from there. If you get some success there, if you like his effort, mix him in a little bit more in there. But at least in that by doing that, even if it's not the first snap, it's the second or third, just maybe if you get any traction in that first offensive series on Sunday against the Chargers, maybe roll him out there to be part of it, to get him early on in the game, because once again, you are one snap away from this guy being either the left tackle or the right tackle on a down by down basis here. So Mike Tomlin talked early in the week too about it's up to him to make sure to keep him involved and get him through all this. And no, they have not given up on him. No, I don't think he's given up on himself. This is just it is, however, a pivotal kind of reset period early on in his career.
Yeah, well said, Dave. One other quick storyline that's been brought up in the national media, we kind of like to dispel and clarify some of the narratives and stuff that gets brought up. There's been a lot of discussion about the game ball that Russell Wilson got against Denver. I know it's the shtick, but Mad Dog Russo, for example, very upset that Russell Wilson got a game ball. Just to clarify here, it's a petty game ball, and what happens is all the current Steelers who played their former team get that game ball. And Fields said this in his answer. I mean, it was part of the answer he gave post-game against Denver. So Russell Wilson got a game ball. Corliss Waitman got a game ball. And practice squad wide receiver Brandon Johnson got a game ball, a petty game ball, because they all were previously Denver Broncos. And so this, I think, is tradition. Arthur Smith got a game ball because of that in week 1. I'm guessing other Falcons players, Van Jefferson, et cetera, did as well. So that is the petty game ball aspect. It's not necessarily a quote unquote traditional game ball for you were the best player, key to victory. So I just want to make sure people are aware that is what's happening behind the scenes.
Mad Dog can eat a hot dog.
Oh, I see what you're doing there.
You
yes.
see where I'm going? Can I say that?
Sure.
And people get the context of it. These we tune in and follow around all these major media talk show, whatever but a lot of them are ill-informed. Let's face it. They're going off just little bits to get mad about something like that and have a rant. I tell you, the cohorts in the back looked like they felt a little bit uncomfortable as he's going through that rant. But anyway, I don't want to pay too much mind to Mad Dog, but I found that entertaining. I found Mel Kiper going, "Old man yells at cloud about they need to outlaw cover 2." that got a lot of traction yesterday in social media and all. But all right, forward from here, forward and onward.
Yep, onward to our interview with Daniel Popper, who covers the Chargers for The Athletic. You can follow him, and you should, on Twitter at Daniel R. Popper. Let's take a pause and come back with him.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Friday, week 3 of the NFL regular season, and the Pittsburgh Steelers will have their home opener of 2024 on Sunday at Acrisure Stadium against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are coming off of a big victory last weekend against the Carolina Panthers out east, and they decided to stay in Charlotte to prepare for the Steelers this week. And staying out east with them, one Daniel Popper. Daniel is the senior writer for The Athletic covering the Chargers, and this is his first time, I believe, on the Terrible Podcast. So with that, Daniel, and by the way, Daniel, you can follow him on Twitter/X at Daniel Popper. That's DanielPopper. Daniel, welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex. Happy Friday.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Daniel, let's dive right into this thing here. Big matchup, 2 undefeated teams. Both teams have kind of similar personalities here. Going to be an interesting game at Acrisure Stadium. You look at the injury report here, the most notable obviously being quarterback Justin Herbert, who did not practice on Wednesday, was limited with that ankle on Thursday. I think Ian Rappaport had a report this morning saying that was extremely limited. All that aside, I'm guessing the expectation is that Justin Herbert will play on Sunday against the Steelers, but I don't think we have to worry about him running too terribly much, and probably going to use him a lot in shotgun pistol. What's your take on the Herbert situation?
Yeah, so going back to Sunday against the Panthers, he fumbled in the second half, and it was really an awkward play. He had edge rusher DJ Johnson wrapped around his ankles. He was trying to extend the play and hit his check down. As that happened, he had a defensive lineman come over the top and hit him, and he kind of got his ankle rolled up. He left the game after that play. It was a turnover. He didn't end up missing a snap. He got, the doctors were looking at his ankle. He ended up getting it retaped, and he finished the game. Now, obviously, didn't practice Wednesday. Thursday, he was out there. But from what I saw during the open period for media, he didn't take any reps during the handoff drill. He didn't make any of the throws when they were working with the tight ends. The right ankle was heavily taped, kind of like an offensive lineman tape job. And then as we were sort of walking off, he started making some throws, but they were really just fade balls, and it didn't look like he was really putting much weight on that back foot, that back ankle, his plant foot. Now, one thing to note here, Justin Herbert missed most of training camp with a plantar fascia injury in his right foot, which is the same side. Now, the plantar fascia is the arch ligament that basically connects your heel to your big toe. So now he's got a couple things that he's managing on that right side, which is something to consider. Now, he's the toughest player I've ever covered. He played through fractured rib cartilage in 2022, which is as painful as it sounds. So this is a player who's going to try and push through everything. Regardless of how much pain he's in, he's going to try and push through. So I think he's going to make every effort to play. Like you mentioned, I think that could end up limiting his mobility a little bit. And I'm sure Steelers fans will remember the last time the Chargers and Steelers played. Justin Herbert rushed for over 90 yards, is the best rushing performance of his career. So that should give Steelers fans a little bit of peace of mind. I don't think he's going to be nearly as mobile as he would be if he wasn't dealing with this ankle issue.
So probably no, and they do at times like to work under center with him. So I would think that that's probably going to be out. Just a lot of shotgun, a lot of pistol with him, right? If he does suit up.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's been a decent amount of shotgun and pistol so far. I mean, against the Panthers, they actually ran like a Colin Kaepernick pistol zone read play where Justin Herbert gained about 13 yards into the red zone. So it's been a good mix to begin with. Obviously, like you said, being under center, there's going to be a little bit more movement there. We'll see at practice today how much he's able to do. But obviously, like if he plays, I would expect there to be some limitations, but I don't think it would be a situation where like he's exclusively in shotgun. Like I think if he plays, they would probably sprinkle in still a little bit of under center stuff. But we'll see. It's going to depend on sort of how it heals, how he's feeling on game day, what the status of sort of that ankle is as we move into Sunday. And there's obviously a little bit of time between now and when they play this game.
All right, how's the rest of the injury report in your mind going to shake out? See Joshua Palmer on there with the elbow and calf, has not practiced a couple of times. And then Junior Colson dealing with a hamstring, hasn't practiced 2 days in a row. And our old buddy Bud Dupree dealing with some sort of illness there. How do you think the rest is anybody on this list going to end up missing the game?
Yeah, so Joshua Palmer, kind of an awkward injury in that game Sunday. He was running a route, and then after someone caught it to his side, he sort of turned upfield to block, and he just slipped. Like, it was completely non-contact, and he sort of awkwardly landed on his arm and then was grabbing at his elbow. He did not return to the game. He's been working off to the side with trainers, which is a positive sign. So I think he'll end up probably being questionable, but we'll see today when the final injury report comes out. Junior Colson, I would expect to not play just because of that hamstring strain. He left the game and did not return. He had been in a rotation at linebacker with Denzel Perrion and Deion Henley. They've been kind of playing all three of them, sort of like a college vibe, with Jesse Minter obviously coming from Michigan, Harbaugh as well. Bud Dupree, I don't have any info on exactly what illness he's dealing with. We'll see if he's at practice today. I would assume if he's able to get back to practice today, he would play in the game on Sunday.
Dan, you're looking at this Chargers run game, as you said, the Michigan feel that Harbaugh is obviously bringing. You got J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards-Dobbins, a just red hot start, averaging almost 10 yards per carry, but they are similar in the total number of carries. I think Edwards has 29, Dobbins 27. Can you break down that committee? When is one used? Is Edwards getting more short yardage work like Baltimore? Is it a real 50-50 split? When are they getting the carries?
Yeah, it's a real 50-50 split. Dobbins has been in there on a couple short yardage situations on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. A couple of his explosive runs have actually come on short yardage situations. That 44-yard touchdown was a 3rd and 1 run. So it's a proper 50-50 split. It's a proper 1-2 punch there. Different running styles, which is I think the biggest part of sort of this committee. J.K. Dobbins gives you a little bit more explosiveness, a little bit more juice. Gus Edwards is just, Greg Roman called him a sledgehammer this week. That's what it is. It's lightning and thunder. You've got a little bit more explosiveness with J.K. Dobbins in there, but this team wants to be really physical, and Gus Edwards' job is to go in there and run into people, like, straight up. That's his role in the offense, and he's trying to wear people down. And so it's been working so far. I think a big part of sort of where this running game is at is just the physicality up front. They've been sort of building this mentality since April 2nd when the players arrived. And I think you're seeing versions of all of these players up front that, well, particularly the guys returning, left tackle Rashawn Slater, left guard Zion Johnson, right guard Trey Pipkins, versions of these players that I haven't seen before from a physicality standpoint. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh builds that type of mentality with every team that he coaches. And you're starting to see it from these players. That was Sunday against the Panthers was, I think, the most dominant physicality run game performance that I've seen from a Chargers offensive line since I started covering the team in 2019.
Wow. Yeah. Big statement performance there. Has the light come on for wide receiver Quentin Johnston? 2 touchdowns already this year, matches number last year. I know last year was such a tough rookie year. Is it something that he's changed, or has the team with the new coaching staff changed something in his game to make him seemingly night and day compared to last year?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like most things, it's a combination, right? Like, he came into the league and was a developmental player. And so his game was not refined enough last year to be an impact player. That's just the reality of the situation. He was not deceptive enough as a route runner. He wasn't clean enough as a route runner. He didn't have a diverse enough set of releases. His hands weren't good enough. His concentration wasn't at the level to succeed in the NFL. And I think he saw that in how he performed. And to his credit, he put in a ton of work this offseason. His route running is vastly improved. His hands are vastly improved. I think his mentality, his commitment, his concentration is all at the NFL level now. And so you're seeing that on some of these plays. He beat J.C. Horn on that touchdown with a great release off the line, a great route down the sideline there on the backside fade, and then he made a great adjustment on the ball and made the catch. Now, the other part of it is how they're using him. The Chargers are using him in better situations to take advantage of his skill set. You're seeing those first round traits come alive because of how they're using them. And I actually dug into the numbers. Last year, for whatever reason, this previous coaching staff was using him on a lot of goes and post routes. Basically, after Mike Williams tore his ACL, they kind of inserted him into that role in the offense as the X receiver. getting downfield. And that's not really his game. He can do it, but he was running posts and goes at, almost 40% of his routes.
Wow.
This year, that's dropped down under 25%. And meanwhile, his crossing routes have gone from under 10% now to close to 20%. So especially in that week 1 game, they're getting him the ball on the move on drags, crossers, slants, all of those types of routes. And then when he gets the ball in his hands, he is an explosive playmaker. He can break tackles. He can run away from people. And he's one of those guys where if you get him on the run on a slant, like he can take it the distance, 80-yard touchdown. Like that's the type of player he is. So I give credit to Quentin for improving his game in all these areas that he had to improve. I also give this coaching staff, and in particular receivers coach Sanjay Lal, a lot of credit for how they're using him in the offense to take advantage of his skill set.
When you look at the offensive line here, particularly the tackles, boy, 2 good ones in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. Man, those guys, if they can keep that those tackles together, look out. Very impressive there. Joe Alt, obviously a rookie first rounder here, going up against TJ Watt on Sunday. Going to be the edge matchups on both sides is going to be something to watch for both these teams, because both teams have such great edge rushers here. When you look at Joe Alt versus Watt in particular here, are they going to just say go at it with him? There's obviously going to be some chipping with the backs and the tight ends like we've seen at times, but are they more apt to maybe just see how this thing goes with him more one-on-one, or do you expect a lot of heavy help with him over on that side? And he's been fine as it is, obviously, a high pedigree player here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with trying to neutralize those edge rushers with the run game. I think you sort of have to start there with any plan when you have 2 edge rushers of this caliber. And if you can get the run game going, you avoid bad downs and distances where they can get into pressure packages and they can let these edge rushers really get after the quarterback. So I think it starts there. If you do get into downs and distances where you have to, drop back pass and you have to pass protect, I would expect them to devote most of their chip resources to the right side and Joe Alt. I think Rashawn Slater at this stage of his career, especially the ball that he's playing right now, has sort of proved that he can be on an island against the elite of the elite. I mean, he did it against Myles Garrett. He's done it against Max Crosby. You can sort of go down the list of guys that he's been able to go toe to toe with. And so my expectation is they would really devote their chip help to Joe Alt in what is going to be a tough challenge for him. Now, he performed well against Max Crosby in that week 1 game. He had some great reps with him, even one-on-one. I think he's capable of doing it, but you're obviously trying to, help your rookie out in a very tough matchup in what's going to be a very tough environment. And they have the players to do it now, right? Like I think previous Chargers teams, they would try to devote chip help to help their tackles at times, and they just didn't have the players to do it. They weren't good enough blocking at tight end or at running back. Now they've gone and gotten Will Dissly, who's one of the best blocking tight ends in the league and can match up with edge rushers on the outside in the run game and the pass game as a blocker. Hayden Hurst is a professional NFL tight end. And then what I've been impressed with is J.K. Dobbins as a pass protector. I think that's been a little bit undersold amid this really great start. His week 1 game against the Raiders was, I think, the best pass protection performance I've seen from a Chargers running back in a long, long time. And so I think you have some players there that can provide the help, which is a big part of this too. You can devote resources, but if you don't have the players, running backs, tight ends, that can provide that help and be successful in that area, then it doesn't really matter. So that would be my expectation, because I think Rashawn Slater is more proven and you're trying to really help your rookie in what's going to be a difficult environment.
This Chargers offense likes to use a lot of tight ends at least multiple tight ends, or if not, they'll have a couple fullback out there. Either 12, I think they lead the NFL in 22 personnel heading into week 3 here
by a huge margin. Yeah, they're over 20% in 22 personnel. Yeah.
Yes, and where I'm going with this is folk hero Scott Matlock. Boy, he's fun. They'll put him in the backfield. They'll put him kind of line him up at tight end, I guess H-back and all. Tell our listeners about Scott Matlock.
Yeah, so he was a defensive lineman drafted in the 6th round out of Boise State in 2023, and was kind of like a lower on the depth chart rotational player as a defensive lineman last year. And then Jim Harbaugh and his staff, they come in and they're looking for a fullback. They brought in some undrafted free agents. Luke Benson, a guy at Georgia Tech, is one guy they tried there. They tried Jordan McFadden there, who's a backup guard for them, who has some really high level athleticism. And then they sort of ended up later in training camp trying Scott Matlock there, and they really liked it. Now, if you remember going back to 2018 with the Ravens when Greg Roman was there, obviously John Harbaugh, the head coach in Baltimore, Patrick Ricard was initially a defensive lineman, and they took him and started playing him on offense. And through that 2018 season, he was a two-way player. He was played about 10 snaps on defense and 10 snaps on offense. And Ricard obviously eventually developed into a full-time offensive player and a really damn good fullback. And I think you're seeing a similar strategy here with Scott Matlock. Now, the one thing with the 22 personnel, I think it's a little bit misleading because when Matlock's on the field, they're counting him as a fullback, even when he's lining up at tight end. So some of those 22 personnel snaps are actually 13 personnel snaps. I think based on what I've seen, I haven't charted it, but I think about half of them are probably where he's lined up at fullback. Half of them he's sort of at tight end. So something to consider. But he's really showed some juice as a blocker. Now, at fullback, I don't think his body control and awareness moving forward is really there yet for him to be successful in fullback type blocking situations. But when he's on the edge inline, like he's showed some real juice. Like he's been really good. Like J.K. Dobbins's 44-yard touchdown. If you go back and watch that play, Gus Edwards is the lead blocker as the fullback. And Scott Matlock actually had a great block on the linebacker there that really cleared the hole to that left side. So he's playing defensive line, he's playing fullback, he's playing tight end, H-back, and he's also playing on special teams. He's on their kickoff return unit. So he's really like a three-way player. And it's just a very Harbaugh thing to do. I mean, they've done it sort of, he and his brother have done it throughout their various stops where they're just looking for football players, man. Like they just want guys that will go out there and hit people. And Scott Matlock certainly has that type of mentality. And I think his transition to offense has been promising so far.
Daniel, just to give us an overview of this Chargers defense, what are their strengths, their weaknesses? Maybe a little tough to judge, especially playing Carolina, which was an abysmal performance from the Panthers last week. But just give us a broad view of where the Chargers are at defensively.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on it. It's at this point, I can't really tell you if this is a good defense. Obviously, the statistics will tell you that it's a great defense, but they played, Gardner Minshew and Bryce Young, and it's really hard to get a gauge of like where exactly this group is at. But the vision for it is make these edge rushers the engine of the defense. And I think that was the case in week 1, less of the case in week 2, because Bryce Young was just hitting his check down after 2.2 seconds on every single snap. But you have great edge rushers, and it's not just Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. You have a second line of edge rushers in Tuli Tuipulotu, and as you guys mentioned, Bud Dupree earlier. That group of 4 is really good, and they'll get them all on the field at the same time. They've been using this, third down package where you have all 4 of those guys on the field and Morgan Fox at nose tackle. And then they'll sometimes bring all 5 on a blitz. Sometimes they'll drop one of the edge rushers in the coverage on a sim presser type thing. And so that's sort of the vision, stop the run, get into favorable downs and distances, and then get creative with these edge rushers. On the back end, I've been really impressed with how it's looked. Again, like I don't know if it's a mirage, right, because of the quarterbacks that they've played, but they're going to play a lot of different coverages. They're pretty much spread across the board here between, cover 3, cover 2, cover 6. They'll play some man, cover 1. They were getting into some Tampa 2 looks last week with Derwin James kind of as that middle of the field dropper, which I thought was interesting, out of dime packages. So they're pretty diverse in the back end. I think they've started to come together as far as disguising some of these looks. I mentioned those Tampa 2 looks. They'll also get into some interesting disguises into cover 3. And they've got some versatile pieces back there. Derwin James, and then who I wrote about today actually is Elijah Molden, who they traded for August 28th with the Titans. They sent a 7th round pick over there. He's a guy that can play safety. He's a guy that can play nickel. AJ Finley, who's a young safety for them. He can play in the deep part of the field. He's played dime. He's played nickel. So I think up front, you're looking at getting these edge rushers, after the quarterback, and the back end, using some of these versatile pieces to disguise coverages, buy an extra count, and give those edge rushers a little bit more time to get after the quarterback.
One more question for me, then I'll have Dave finish things out. I know this answer could be, 20 minutes about what Harbaugh has already brought to this team, but if there's one particular aspect that he's brought culturally that has seemed to change his team so much from obviously where Brandon Staley was at last year, just, real struggle at the end there. What is the biggest influence that Harbaugh has brought to this organization?
Yeah, great question. I would start with accountability. If you're talking about the biggest difference between Jim Harbaugh and Brandon Staley, Staley tended to play favorites. He treated the best players in the roster differently than he did, the bottom of the roster. And when things started going south, that is the primary thing that split that locker room apart. With Jim Harbaugh, he does not care how much money you make. He does not care your standing in the league. You have to perform, and everyone will be held to the same standard. And I think Elijah Molden had a great quote to me yesterday when I talked to him after practice, because it's interesting when you get a guy that sort of parachutes in late, they might have like a sort of a broader view, a more 10,000 foot view of like what exactly is going on here. And the one thing he said that was really interesting was there's no politics here, which I think really goes into what Jim Harbaugh has changed here. Like everyone is held to that same standard. There's no playing favorites. There's no, we gave this guy an $80 million contract, and so he gets a little bit more leash than this rookie who's, fighting for playing time. Like, no, everyone's held to the same standard. And I think Jim Harbaugh said it, in an intro video the Chargers released, like, those who perform will stay. And those who stay will become champions, and that's what he believes. It's all about performance, and it does not matter who you are, your standing, or anything. Like, everyone's held to that same standard. There's accountability there for the players, for the coaching staff, and Jim Harbaugh himself. He's willing to admit when he's wrong, which is a huge part about being a head coach, being honest and transparent, which I think Mike Tomlin has done a fantastic job of throughout his time in Pittsburgh. And I think Jim Harbaugh brings a similar approach here in Los Angeles, or there in Los Angeles, since I'm sitting in Charlotte right now.
When you look at this defense on tape, really downhill attacking unit. I think they do it out of a lot of light boxes as well, too, specifically against a run. But when you look at the names on just a depth chart here, and then match it up with how they played, is the interior defensive line unit the most underrated position group in this? I mean, everybody knows who Poona Ford is, but probably less so about Morgan Fox, even though he's been around, I think, a little bit. And then you got Tito Ogbanya there. Is that the most underrated group of this defense? And then who's the most underrated player on this defense right now?
Yeah, you guys are all over this, man. These are some fantastic questions. I totally agree with you. I think the interior defensive line is the most underrated group on this defense. They had a lot of young guys, coming into the season. We mentioned Scott Matlock, you mentioned Tito. And so there were some questions about what it was going to look like. But they've been really good through 2 weeks. The one guy is Poona Ford. And it's interesting, like, he was out of the rotation basically in Buffalo last year. Like, he was an afterthought. He only played in 8 games. And the Chargers identified him as a guy who could come in and really elevate their interior in the run game. And he's been exactly that. I mean, he's been dominant on the interior. And I think you have a player who's like got something to prove, like you end up in a situation in Buffalo where you're effectively benched. And Poona obviously still feels like he has something left in the tank. He gets an opportunity to play here, and he's been really dominant. Now, week 1 was better than week 2 on the interior. Last week, I felt like they weren't as physical up front on the interior, especially Tito Ogbanya. I feel like didn't have as good of a game in week 2 as week 1, so it's something to monitor. But yeah, like, if you're trying to play that way, like, 90% of their snaps right now are with light boxes, so 6 or fewer players in the box. They're playing a lot of nickel, and if you're going to play that way and try and drop players in the coverage and defend the pass, like, you have to have guys that are able to take on double teams on the interior there. And they've been really, really good, and definitely been a bright spot and something that's sort of surprised me so far through this season. Now, second part of that question, who's the most underrated player on the defense? I would probably go with Alohi Gilman, who's the starting safety next to Derwin James. He's a bit like, when you see him on the field, the first thing that's probably going to pop in your mind is that he's a little bit undersized, but he is the most instinctive player on the defense. He's incredibly intelligent, and he plays with a certain fire and passion, physicality that I think adds a lot to the defense. He's a playmaker. One thing he does at a really high level is he attacks the football down the field. If you're a ball carrier and you're getting into that third level of the defense, 8, 9, 10 yards down the field, like, you have to be very aware of where 32 is, because he's going to come after you. He's going to try and punch the football out. He's done it numerous times in his career. So I really like him. I think he's a great piece next to Derwin James. He provides some stability. on the back end when Derwin James moves closer to the line of scrimmage. And he's a guy that I think is going to sort of continue to ascend here in Jesse Minter's defense. He was dealing with an injury, but he's back in practice this week, and I would expect him to return for this game.
Alex oversees a lot of our tape breakdowns on both sides of the ball before every game, and we have the both these post up on Friday here. And then one of his main takeaways is for the make the Chargers defense move it some, use some motion here. The Steelers are normally heavy tight ends, heavy personnel packages, and obviously like to grind you out. But Alex and the guys seem to think that more 11 personnel by the Steelers with some heavier motion mixed in might make a difference against this defensive unit. And then secondly, my thought is how is this Chargers defense handled quarterback mobility, and obviously have Justin Fields making his third start in this game. Are these two areas that maybe the Steelers offense should exploit? Maybe a little bit more 11 personnel, some more motion, and then trying to get Justin Fields on the move more?
Yeah, I think anytime you're facing a Justin Fields team, it's going to come down to, like, can you stop him as a runner? Because he's obviously super dangerous in that area. And then I think, the second part of the down where he's able to extend plays, like, is obviously really important, being like after sort of the coverage unfolds, being sticky in those scramble drill situations. The motion stuff is interesting. I think like using motion is a good way to sort of keep edge rushers honest, especially, using some of that jet motion stuff. I think if you're going to try and attack the middle of the field, Denzel Perryman is going to start at linebacker next to Deion Henley. Junior Colson, I'm not expecting to play. Denzel is a downhill player, and he's going to hit the crap out of you. But,
you can swear, you're fine.
Okay. Yeah, he's that's just what he is. He's a bowling ball downhill, and he sets the tone in that way. But where his weaknesses are in coverage. So I think if you get to some play action stuff, draw him in, try and take advantage of some of that mentality, and try and attack the middle of the field and maybe expose like Denzel Perryman and coverage there. I think that's a possibility. So both of those things I think are parts of the game plan that the Steelers can potentially exploit, and we'll see how the Chargers respond.
All right, we're wrapping up Daniel Popper. You can read his stuff at The Athletic, and make sure we'll have the link to his Twitter. You should be following him this week as well, too. We'll make sure to pump that out there. Daniel, what will they find over at The Athletic, the most recent couple of articles here? And we always ask our opposing beat writers if they're up to it to give a prediction on this game. Is this 9-6, 12-9? Give us your thoughts on that, if you don't mind, who you think will come out victorious in this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be good old-fashioned football, man. Like, I am excited for this game.
Trap it up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're a football fan, like, this is going to be your game to watch. Now, if you're a new age fan, you want to see people throwing it all over the yard, maybe flip to a different game. But if you like defense and you like physicality, then this is your game. I'm expecting it to be low scoring. And I think it'll come down to a drive in the fourth quarter, and sort of we'll see what happens. I genuinely think it could go either way. I honestly, like, in those types of situations, late in games, I'm going to take the better quarterback. I think Justin Herbert is the better quarterback. So I would take a Chargers win, 12-9, something like that, exactly like you said.
Fair.
But then again, like, I feel like anytime everyone feels like they have a pulse on a game, and that, like, everyone feels like this is going to be a low scoring slugfest, it ends up being the exact opposite, because the NFL is completely impossible to predict.
Right.
But that's my feeling on it. And I think it's going to be a good game for those old fashioned football fans. As far as stuff to check out, got a bunch of content up on The Athletic this week. Wrote about Quentin Johnson, who we talked about earlier this week, his development. Some of that stuff we got into about sort of where he's improved and how the Chargers coaching staff has influenced that. I did a film breakdown of the physicality with this offensive line, if you're interested in that and seeing sort of how this offensive line is working right now in the run game. Did a film breakdown of that. And then today I had a story up on Elijah Molden, who I mentioned earlier, who the Chargers traded for. He started and played the most defensive snaps of any player last week. It was a sort of an inside look about how he learned the playbook so quickly, and what impact he's making on the Chargers defense right now. So if you want to look at some Chargers angles, some important stuff that's going on with this team heading into this game, take a look there for all my content.
Daniel, first time on. Hopefully it's not the last. You're absolutely fantastic. A pleasure to joy to talk to. We could talk to you another 30 minutes here, but we know you got to get busy out there out east in Charlotte covering the Chargers on this Friday. You can follow Daniel on Twitter/X at Daniel Popper, Popper is the last name. Read his stuff at over on The Athletic. Should be easy to find for everybody that has subscriptions for over there, which hopefully most of you do. So, Daniel, with that, thanks for taking out time on this Friday morning and being on the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
All right, fellas. Appreciate you having me.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. Again, our special thanks to Daniel Popper, who covers the Chargers for The Athletic. Follow him on Twitter, at Daniel R. Popper. Shout him out and thank him for his time. I know he's been living out of a suitcase here like the Chargers themselves for the past week as they've stayed East Coast in Charlotte before they go up to Pittsburgh, I assume, on Saturday. So first time on, but a great interview. Tons of valuable insight from Daniel.
I need to clean my glasses. And apology to Daniel Popper. You just hit on it. His Twitter handle is Daniel R. Popper. That's DanielRPopper. My apologies, but make sure you hop on if you get a chance. Those of you that do a lot of posting on Twitter/X to shout him out, thank him. First time we've had him on, Alex, and he was great. And down the line, hope to have him on back again. So we appreciate his Friday morning time.
All right, Dave, let's talk about this week 3 matchup. I believe the only matchup of the weekend between undefeated teams, the 2-0 Chargers and the 2-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. I think both teams using this game as a really good line in the sand to see really who they are. You could say that they've beaten some quote-unquote weaker opponents to begin the season. It's all relative. It's hard to win in the NFL, but you could still make the case, obviously, the Chargers beating the Raiders and the Panthers, and Pittsburgh beating the very rusty Atlanta Falcons, who look much better in week 2 against the Eagles, and the Denver Broncos. So again, a good litmus test, I think, either way you slice it for both teams here. Starting with this Chargers offense, again, we'll assume Justin Herbert is the starting quarterback. If not, then you're looking at either Tyler Heineke or Easton Stick, but I think Herbert will be the guy. We'll see the impact the injury has there. Beyond him, what sticks out to you? What concerns you about this Chargers offense?
Their ability up front to run the football, first and foremost. They've got a nice two-headed monster in J.K. Dobbins and who's the other back?
Gus Edwards.
Gus
the bus.
Gus,
we shouldn't call him the bus. That's Pittsburgh territory.
And the Steelers obviously know quite a bit. They know quite a bit about both of them, really, even though J.K. was injured early on in his career. Obviously, they know a lot about him coming out of college on top of that. But these two make a really good 1-2 punch overall. Sometimes you'll see both of them in the backfield even together. As we talked with Daniel, this is a team that uses a lot of multiple tight ends and or 2 running backs or 1 running back, 1 fullback on the field at times. They very much want to try to establish the run and then work off their play action from there. Not a lot of deep shots overall by Justin Herbert so far. More of a kind of a shorter intermediate passing game. I think he's something like 2 of 6, Alex, on passes more than 16 yards down the field. But they obviously didn't have to do a lot of that in that game against the Panthers because, hate to use the pun here, they ran away with it. But they did. They'll work off of the outside edges of the tackles. They'll run some of that inside zone stuff. They got a really stout offensive line. So with the Steelers, assuming that the Chargers are going to run out a lot of that heavy personnel in this thing, this is going to be a 2-chipper game. That vaunted front of theirs is going to have to do a good job. Not that the Steelers don't go into every game thinking we got to stop the run, but this is most definitely where it starts here because I think you want to put Justin Herbert in a lot of unfavorable situations of 2nd and long and 3rd and long and make him drop back as many times as possible on that ankle of his. And I don't think you have to obviously worry about Herbert on the move as much because of the issues that he's had with that right foot and ankle throughout this early portion of the season here. but you got to get it done up front. You can't let those guys move you out of the gap. Still pull occasional guard or tackle on this. I think they're real stout even in the interior portions. And I mean, what can you say about these two tackles of theirs as well too? They can really move the pile there. So the running game has me the most concerned, especially the kind of numbers that they put up. They have, I think, 9 runs of 10 yards or longer so far in the season, and Dobbins has 7 of those so far. And anytime you get, and those are kind of termed explosive runs in the NFL of 10 or more, he's got a couple that have gone a lot further than that, obviously, there. So you cannot give up those 10, 12, 15, 35-yard runs to the running backs there. It all starts with shutting down that running game and getting them in second and third and long situations.
And those 7 runs are tied for the most in the NFL with Alvin Kamara and Jordan Mason. And Dobbins only has 27 carries on the season. So 7 of those have gone for 10 plus yards. I mean, he's putting up true like freshman difficulty video game numbers. He's averaging 9.9 yards per carry. I know the sample size is small. Obviously, the number's not going to stay there, but it's still just insane to go through 2 games. I always compare it to, and this is my very football nerdiness, but anytime I see like crooked yards per carry numbers, I call it the Beatty Feathers scale. Beatty Feathers averaged 8.4 yards per carry back in the 30s for the Chicago Bears. And so like that's just like the weird numbers that he's putting up right now. And listen, he's always been a really talented back. It's been the health, which has been his big bugaboo. And I just pulled up the numbers here. Remember all this, it's been limited because he's been hurt, but the success he's had against Pittsburgh, I pulled up the 2 games. In 2022, he had 15 carries for $120 and a touchdown. In 2020, it was the final game of 2022, he had 17 carries for 93 yards, but still almost 5.5 yards per carry. So Dobbins has really had Pittsburgh's number. He's explosive, get out in space, and then Edwards complements that. It's the Ravens back, literally the Ravens backfield. They both played in Baltimore, where Edwards is kind of more of the hammer. Yeah, there are multiple tight ends with Disley and Eric Tomlinson and those kinds of guys. And under OC Greg Roman, another former Raven, they run everything. They run power, short pulls. They run longer traps. They run inside zone out of 1 back, out of 2 back with Matlock, who you guys talked about there, the fullback / defensive end / special teamer. They run everything. I did notice they really, in this kind of is their we're going to be more physical than you mentality. I know in the NFL, the hashes are more narrow. And so, the open side and the closed side, the field and boundary matter less, but they will run to the closed side, to the hash side a lot more than most teams. Most teams want to run to the open side, the field side. They're going to run it in tight. So if they're on the left hash, they're going to run it to the left side. That's a pretty big part of their personality. So they really just feel like they can kick your butt. And so far, they've been kicking butt 2 games in.
Boy, runs off left tackle for them so far. 8 plays, averaging 10.25 yards per carry, tops in the NFL. Obviously, a couple of those were extremely long runs by Dobbins. One of them, I think, the touchdown
last week.
Off left tackle. So they're going to try to, most of their runs have seemed to believe it or not, go to the left side. Let's see, left guard, left tackle, left end. You total those up, that's 30 runs that way, as opposed to 20 to right guard, right tackle, right end. A small sample size there, but and then they also have 15 runs up the middle for a 6.93 yard average, which ranks them 3rd in the NFL. Their weakest runs so far outside of the top 15, and when you speak directionally as far as run stats go, they're less effective on runs to right guard. They only average 2.11 yards per carry, 29th in the NFL, small sample size so far. But every other direction, they rank 13th in the NFL or better, at least in the archaic average yards per carry stat.
What about the pass game? What do you look at there? It might be a little harder to judge because, as you said, they've gotten to run the ball at will, similar to Pittsburgh. You got Quentin Johnston having a really good sophomore year that he needed after taking a lot of heat as a rookie. To me, it's a lot of mirrored concepts. It's a lot of horizontal spacing, less vertical shots. But if it's middle of the field close, if it's cover 1, Herbert will take that shot vertically. But I do feel like they're really trying to space the field horizontally.
Yeah, and I thought Daniel did a great job of highlighting how Quentin Johnston's being used. Less on the deeper down the field stuff and more on the intermediate digs, quick slants, crossers, those kind of things there. So, assuming Joey Porter's going to follow him around, and I think mostly he's been used as a left side guy. So, it's going to be interesting to see how much they move him around, just period, left versus right. I know they have used him some on the right so far. That lad McConkey out of Georgia, a very talented guy. We'll see what happens with Joshua Palmer, him battling through an injury this week. But lad McConkey is a guy they could most definitely move around in the slot, a dangerous guy. So whoever the Steelers roll out there on Ladd is going to have their hands full. They'll use their tight ends in Hurst and Disley, talented group there as well too. They do a good job of spreading the football around overall. I would expect though, especially with this Steelers front and all, and with the overall health of Herbert, this ball is going to probably come out quick at times in here. So a more compressed passing game. They like to use the RPO. They like to build off of play action as well too, even out of shotgun and the pistol as well too. Herbert's made a couple of his interceptions though have been kind of eye raisers to me. So he is prone to kind of forcing a ball in there, maybe where it doesn't belong. Horn got one in coverage against him in that Panthers game, kind of a felt like a forced throw, I think, with Herbert on the move in that one there. So you got to get on these obvious passing downs. You got to try to get the pressure on him, make him hold on to the football, and you could probably come away with a couple of sacks if you do. But all of their offensive success will stem off of how effective they are running the football.
Mm-hmm. McConkey's going to be a thorn in Pittsburgh's side in this one, Dave. He's going to be that annoying. Like, it might not be a big game for fantasy owners, but he's going to have like 5 catches for 57 yards, maybe a touchdown or a key third down. How does Beanie Bishop match up against him? Beanie's not really been tested much in coverage so far. It's been a lot of zone. Atlanta didn't have a lot in the slot. Denver wasn't too deep. The Chargers have a really good slot. I was a huge Ladd McConkey fan coming in.
Good after the catch too.
Yeah, really nuanced, strong route runner, more athletic, faster than people gave him credit for. He ran really well. He's not kind of this plucky Wes Welker slot receiver, going to be a big time threat, I think, post catch in open grass. So that'll be something to watch for. Alert play action on 1st and 10, especially first play of a drive. Sometimes they'll come out heavy and try to lull teams into that run game, false sense of security, and then try to play pass behind it. What else? In the red zone, they love running over routes and crossers, so I think it's hard to play man coverage down there. You're going to get picked and too much traffic. I think playing a lot of zone down inside the red zone, 10, 5-yard line is going to be important for Pittsburgh there defensively. In terms of weaknesses, what they struggle with, I think the O-line had issues picking up stunts and twists. I thought, the Raiders, for example, were effective creating some pressure that way. And so for the Chargers being on the road, assumed silent count, made strain communication more, so that you might see some more games and twists from Pittsburgh in this one. And it was really weird in that week 1 game, which I think was at home against the Raiders. They had like 5 penalties offensively in the first 20 minutes. They had like 3 on Disley. McConkey got called for a false start. So there were a lot of issues there. So I wonder, Pittsburgh at home, what they've done in past years is they've stemmed the front with some late line shifts. We see the D line shift down last second, and they're trying to kind of simulate like they're about to fire off the football, and that sometimes will goad opposing offenses into jumping early and thinking they're about to move there again. The Chargers working on the silent counts. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm going to stem the front. I'm going to kind of, try to bluff some of these blitzes, try to get these tight ends or these guys to jump here a little bit, because they seemed a little prone to moving early, especially in that week 1 game.
I think where they can make sense. Look, this is a pedigree, a good offensive line from tackle to tackle here, and if the Chargers end up should they wind up in this game, it's just going to add more to the Slater versus Slater and Alt duo and how good those are. I do wonder, an interesting matchup to watch in this one, maybe Larry Ogunjobi on right guard Trey Pipkins, and really Pipkins / Bozeman. What kind of hay can Keanu Benton and Havoc can Benton and Larry Ogunjobi cause up the middle there, because we're probably going to see a lot of Benton in this game. A lot of base defense from the Steelers, at least on early down type situations when the Chargers roll out, heavier personnel groups. So I think a matchup maybe to watch here is the right guard with Trey Pipkins and Bradley Bozeman at center versus Benton / Ogunjobi.
Yeah, it's a great point. Carl Dunbar talks about his fish of the week, though, the weakest lineman to attack, and that's probably going to be Trey Pipkins, who I think was more of a tackle, small school kid out of Sioux Falls. Pat Meyer coached him. He was there when Pat Meyer was there, so he's kind of had some staying power because, there's a lot of pedigree. You got 3 first-round picks starting. You got Slater and Alt, obviously, but people forget about Zion Johnson was a first-round pick out of Boston College. So I think it's a great point there. Trying to win against that center and right guard might be your best chance. I would also caution Steelers fans to take their blood pressure medication, because you're probably going to be yelling at the appearance of TJ Watt getting held a lot this week. I know against Alt, who's almost 6'9", the best way to beat him is going to be to rip under and through him for TJ Watt. And so it's going to probably create some of those looks, always getting choked and held. And there's a carve out in the rules that allow for, at least say that holding does not have to be called on those rip attempts by those edge rushers. So I think Watt's game plan this one, it's going to be hard to kind of, really go through Alt or try to go inside of him. I think trying to rip through and kind of use the built-in leverage that Watt has, 4 inches shorter, is going to be the key to him winning off the edge. But like you said, like Daniel said, they're going to chip and they're going to give Alt some help when needed.
Going to be tough he's going to need a couple of pickaxes to find that gold nugget against Joe Alt this week. Very talented guy. And look, I mean, once again, we just pointed out where we think the weaknesses are maybe on this offensive line of the Chargers. Those guys are still good, and they've obviously got it done on the ground, and specifically on that left side. They're gonna run left. They're gonna test Highsmith and Herbig whenever he's out there on that left side. They're going to test that would be the right side of the Steelers defense early in the and often on the ground in this one.
Any other thoughts for the Chargers offense, or do you want to flip over to the defense now?
Just, make sure. I think one of my fears when you have 2 powerful backs like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards here is, man, you can't arm tackle these guys. And if they're, we haven't got to the Chargers defense yet, but one appearing weakness, I think, at least what I've seen on tape when it comes to the Chargers defense, is they get themselves in trouble trying to arm tackle at that second level with their linebackers as well. We don't need to be talking about the Steelers being that bunch this week. The Chargers are going to have some successful runs in this game, 3-4 yards, but you can't arm tackle these guys and let what should be a 3 or 4 yard run turn into a 6, 7, 8, 9 yard run.
Right. So let's go over to the Chargers defense now. What sticks out to you about them? And I'm glad we both survived watching that Carolina Panthers tape, because it's tough to watch, tough to learn too much from that game in particular.
Yeah, I think the thing that sticks out first and foremost through the first 2 games is that they have been able to get it done with lighter boxes overall there. And I think predominantly they've shown to kind of be a too high group, and those they do a good job of slanting those defensive linemen up front into gaps. However, when they miss, when they don't get the proper fills that happen on the defensive side of the football, that seems to be when they've given up the biggest runs in these first 2 games. And then I think the other thing that stuck out is the tackling on that side of football, especially when you get to the second and third levels. The touchdown that they gave up, one of them to the Raiders in week 1, they had 2 guys over on the side that failed to make a tackle, and that ended up in the end zone on them. So they're more of a kind of, they like to slant, they like to scrape those linebackers into the gaps and all. If you got a guy like Zach Frazier that can get off his first zone block, get to the second level and get a bite, they are not afraid to play downhill in a hurry. Their strength is to do that with a light box. So it's imperative that when they do show too high on early downs, that you get the job that you hit on it best a couple of minutes ago there. We got to see the Steelers have success on first down here. You got to get the Chargers defense there in 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4, or 3rd and very short type situations where they're not able to guess as good of what you're probably going to do offensively, and it all starts on first down. I think the Steelers, look, you're not going to have MyCole Pruitt, but you will have Darnell Washington. We'll see what they do with the with Broderick Jones, maybe as an extra offensive lineman in situations there. You're going to have to try to play that. You're going to have to try to play into their strength, and that's them stopping the run on early downs. You've got to win that battle in the trenches here, and then build your play action game and maybe some boots and whatnot off of that.
Yeah, and you can boot on first down and get 5-6 yards that way. It doesn't always have to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust to get some first down dominance or at least some traction there. It'll be really interesting. You're right. The Chargers have played a lot of too high. NFL's playing a lot of too high right now, but they've also played a lot of sub package against 12 personnel. I saw that against the Raiders, saw that versus Carolina, where they'd be in 12 personnel, more run personality, and the Chargers would have 5 DBs on the field, either with a slot corner or a 3 safety package, and bring Derwin James, who's built like a linebacker, to come down and play the run. So, I just can't imagine the Chargers will play light against the Steelers if they go heavy, knowing Pittsburgh's personality. So I am concerned about if Pittsburgh's going to try to go big on big, and the Chargers will be in their base defense, and Pittsburgh with their heavy personnel, will they have much success running the football? So I want to see what it looks like out of 11. If you kind of spread things out a bit, keep the Chargers a bit lighter, and I think motion can be effective. We talked about that with Daniel a little bit ago. Yeah, whenever I scout opposing defenses, I always kind of have in my mind a mental checklist of how do they respond to motion? Do they typically shift and respond to whatever the offense does? And the Chargers are pretty heavy responding. Anytime you motion or you shift, they're going to move with you. And so I wonder, I can't exactly describe exactly how to go about it, but I think there's probably some ways to create some gaps or get the defense out of position by using motion against them. So I think we want to see a lot of motion in this one. And I might go a little lighter in this game because I don't have Pruitt, because I don't know if I want to try to win this war up front while my offensive line is still not fully healthy against that Chargers front that can be pretty tough and physical up front.
Let's see, light box numbers on them. 73% on so far through 2 games. 7-man box, 23%. They've stacked the box on just, I think, 4 plays in total for 4% there.
Wouldn't that some of that be because they're playing with the lead and teams are throwing? Is that impacting?
Sure, small sample size for sure. I mean, well, you hit on it. We'll see how they respond in this game, because look, they know the Steelers want to run the football in this game. So and that's how the Steelers are going to build everything up off of that. So yeah, I mean, and the Steelers predominantly, especially under Arthur Smith, have been a heavy personnel package, but you could maybe catch them by trying to spread things out with more with 11 stuff, especially when you don't have MyCole Pruitt, and at least widen things out on them. Maybe give you a potential to get your offensive linemen off blocks and out into space and open up wider running lanes. I do think you can run up on the middle on them, especially if they're not filling properly. I think that's where they've given up a few of the bigger runs that they've given up, and they haven't given up obviously many of those, but they have been run on certain plays at time. Albeit, I think one of the Chuba Hubbard ones was after the game was well in hand at that point, where they just try not to give up the explosive play, but. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much 11 personnel, especially if it's a close game, first and second half together combined, to see if this winds up being the heaviest use of 11 personnel by the Steelers on offense.
Yeah, I might zig when they're going to zag here and kind of try to stay one step ahead, because I think both teams know how each team would ideally like to operate, and that's going to be heavy, that's going to be physical. May want to go a little different in this one. What about the Chargers secondary pass defense? What are your thoughts?
Well, hey, just as a whole, they've got to make these 2nd and 3rd level guys tackle. I think the Chargers have had some problems with some angles and with some overall tackling once guys get 4, 5, 6 yards past the line of scrimmage there. You're probably going to have instances here where you're going to have some one-on-one battles on the outside where you're going to have to take your shots to George Pickens. You got to get George involved early in this game, however that looks like. I think there's an opportunity, especially if they roll out the smaller personnel nickel packages there, to maybe get Pat Freiermuth on a smaller guy and try to take advantage of that. So I'm not expecting a ton of deep shots down the field, but there will be the spots, I think, in certain situations where you get favorable middle of the field safety, where you get one-on-one on the outside, and you just got to let your best player win in that situation with George Pickens. But if ever there was a game for Pat Freiermuth to have 10, 11, 12 targets, this one might be it.
Yeah, if you get him on Perryman, especially. Now, Henley, the other linebacker, he's a really good athlete. I think he was a college receiver initially, and he was at Nevada, then transferred to Washington State, so he can run. But if you get him on Perryman, that's a matchup to, I think, exploit, or maybe a running back, Harris or Warren on Perryman. Yeah, the Chargers are more of a zone team. I think middle of the field overall can be more open. They run more too high, as you talked about, and so I think it's less of that single high posture and less man coverage than Denver. It's kind of really the opposite of that. So I think you're going to see, for the first time this season, the middle of the field targeted more. How much success they have, is anyone's guess, but I think you'll see more of an effort to get the ball between the numbers and the hashes than the first 2 weeks of the season. The thing to watch for, and this has become so common, even Pittsburgh's doing it right now, is some of those 3-by-1 looks on the D line on obvious pass situations where they're going to have 3 defensive linemen on one side and then a backside defensive end opposite, and they're going to run a ton of twists in games. Anytime you see that 3-by-1 alignment, know and expect a twist or a game to come, whether that's the trip side DN looping into the A gap, or they're going to run a D-tackle game or something like that. So the Steelers offensive line has to be able to communicate, recognize, because the Chargers will throw some good pressure looks at you, and the 3-by-1 is an immediate alert that they're going to stunt or do something creative.
Bosa and Mack is no picnic for.
Oh my goodness, that's you're going to see.
The Chargers defensive coordinator talked about Merry Christmas to Joe Alt because of having to face another solid edge rusher in TJ Watt. Troy Falatano, he's going to. As good as as good as his first performance was, he did some good things in there. He's going to need some help in this game. So you're going to have to make sure that you're doing to him, Bosa, what opposing teams try to do to TJ Watt. You're going to have to put some bodies on him, because Bosa, and look, even you talk about Bosa and Mack on the other. You see Mack put Colton Miller on the skates in that game against the Raiders and push him right back in Minshew's pocket. So as good as Dan Moore Jr. has been so far to start this season, he better pack a lunch on Sunday.
Yeah, you may see some more Darnell Washington, a lot of pass blocking. That's kind of been what he's been doing a lot of this year. I know in week 1 against Atlanta, he did some of that against Judon, and you probably do some of that in this one to try to contain, not to say he's going to be solo on those guys, Bosa or Mack, but some definitely giving some help there and some chips against those guys, because they're going to be as tough of a duo. And as you said, and as Daniel said, they got guys behind, they got, Bud Dupree and others they can rotate in and keep guys fresh. So it's going to be tough up front for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to, I'm with you. I'd like to see some more motion. I'd like to see some more of these boots, some of these half-field, easy decisions for Justin Fields, and wouldn't mind seeing a handful more of design type situations for Justin Fields on the hoof.
The concern though is when you boot, if Bosa and Mack don't get fooled, then you got really good athletes in space trying to chase down field. So you can still boot and do some different creative stuff, but I just would be judicious about how you boot, because we're going to make sure those guys don't wreck your play.
Yeah, and look, that's where some motion can come in handy to get them going the other way as well too.
Yeah, you may do some fullback stuff. They've done that with in the preseason, that kind of has a fullback to stay in to help protect, and they're going to have another flat option with a receiver instead. So still want to boot, still want to change the launch point. Always good to get those DNs to be a little uncertain about where Fields is going to drop back. And of course, it all is revolved around running the ball well and staying on schedule, not being in 3rd and 9 against those guys, because they're going to pin their ears back and you're going to be in trouble.
And look, there's stemming from all those Mel Kiper comments, about cover 2 and all like that. There obviously scoring and explosive plays seem to be down even more 2 weeks into the season and all. And the Steelers have not, throwing out the penalty plays, of course, have not been good. It's even so. Taking the profit plays and all like that, moving the chains, it's still so hard in the NFL to put together 10, 12, 14 play drives, especially those that end up in the end zone versus a field goal. So it feels like we've got to be talking about 4 or 5 explosive plays somehow, some way for the Steelers offense in this game.
Yeah, they can't just. The war of attrition is nice and it's helpful, but it can't be the only way that Pittsburgh wins. And for a team struggling to put up points, if you can hit that big chunk play that flips the field, puts you in the end zone, hopefully that's going to be needed against the Chargers.
You run more mesh against this group?
Probably not, because they don't play a ton of man. I mean, maybe on some of those third downs, when they play man, it's gonna be off the pressure. So when they kind of show some of those looks on third down, they're gonna run some more cover 1. But then does it take too long for the mesh to kind of open up? So I mean, maybe, but again, I'm expecting more zone in this one. So I'm looking for more ways to flood and beat zones than I am going to be to beat man coverage.
If I'm the Chargers, I'm concentrating on tackling because I think that if the Steelers win this game, we might be talking about their best yak game of the year and their best broken tackle game of the year.
Yeah, very, very, very possible there. All right, Dave, any final thoughts? I think we covered this game pretty good.
Yeah, what's ball positioning, field positioning going to play a part in this game?
Yeah, always. I think always in tight games it will. See, Corliss Waitman his second time out. Can Pittsburgh block a punt? I mean, Killebrew got so close last week. They got a good kicker, and
he missed an extra point.
Oh, did he?
In one of those games, I think. What was it, Panthers? I think. But,
okay.
Well, yeah, I think the Steelers had the better kicker here at home. Obviously.
Sure. I agree, but they got a decent kicker as well, so we'll see. And they got some decent return guy in Davis too to contend with. All right, Dave, let's get to our Week 3 picks around the NFL before we make our picks for the Steelers game. And we are both 1-0 to start the week as Aaron Rodgers and the Jets rolled over the Jacoby Brissett-led Patriots last night.
Yeah, we were laying 6.5 in that game with the Jets, and they easily covered there. So it feels good to start 1-0 here. Let's go to Denver at Tampa Bay. Buccaneers at home laying 6.5 against the Broncos, coming off home loss to the Steelers.
Go with Tampa Bay. Denver's offense, they can't run the ball. I know Vita Vea is a little banged up, but if he can play, stop the run, put Bo Nix in the position to try to win the game, too tough of a task. So give me Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Tampa Bay at home. I like that laying the 6.5 points. I'm with you. The Giants on the road against the Browns. The Browns 6.5 point home favorites.
It's a pretty big line. I'll go Browns though.
Yeah, they're going to get after the quarterback in this one. I don't think they'll have any problem shutting down the run. I'll take the Browns lay to 6.5 points. The Eagles on the road against the high-flying Saints. The Saints are home favorites by 3 points against the Eagles in this one.
Yeah, hats off to the Saints. Just absolutely red hot start. I don't want to disrespect them because they played amazing football, but I'm going to go with the Eagles in this one. I think the Saints cool off a little bit.
I'll go with the Saints lay the 3 points at home, with that being the key factor there. Houston Texans on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. Texans 2-point road favorites over the Vikings.
Man, Minnesota looked good. Sam Darnold looked good. Justin Jefferson should play. What do I want to go here? On the road for Houston, I'll go with the Texans, though. Close one.
I'll go with the Vikings in the upset at home. I'll take those 2 points here. Green Bay Packers. Are they going to have Jordan Love on the road against the Titans? They did a good job of maximizing what Malik Willis does well. That surprised me last week. Good on them. Packers on the road against the Titans. Titans are at home laying 3 points.
This one's tough overall. Just gut feeling Tennessee plays ball control. And Will Levis has to clean things up. I'll go Tennessee, but not too confident in this one.
I'll take the Packers in the upset on the road in this one. Give me the +3 on that. I'm gonna hit one of these road plus the points outright victories here. Bears on the road against the Colts. Colts laying 1.
Yeah, I know Richardson has not played his best ball so far. They lost to Forrest Buckner. Won't play in the Steelers game. That's going to be a big loss for them. This
They
one.
might not have that other edge guy either. The Colts.
Oh yeah, which one is that?
Who's the
The UCLA guy they drafted? I
uh,
think it's him. Yeah, the first round pick, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Man, I don't know on this one. Not going to be a good picking this week. I don't think I'll take the Colts though.
I'll take the Colts and lay that point as well. There, Panthers on the road against the Raiders. Got Andy Dalton making the start for the Panthers. They go on the road against the Raiders. Raiders 6-point home favorites here in Vegas.
Raiders win. Panthers cover.
I'll take the Raiders outright cover that 6 points there. They'll be able to get after Andy Dalton. Miami Dolphins on the road against the Seahawks. Dolphins obviously without Tua for at least 4 games now at this point. Seahawks at home laying 4.5 points.
Yeah, I got to go Seattle. I mean, Skylar Thompson, that's a big drop off there at home for Seattle. Give me the Seahawks.
I'll take the Seahawks, lay the 4.5 with you. 49ers on the road against the beat up Rams. 49ers laying 6.5 points. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Kittle on this one. And I know Debo, they're not going to have him, but they've got a lot of other weapons. Obviously not going to have McCaffrey either, but 49ers 6.5 point road favorites versus the Rams.
It's beat up versus beat up right now. I took the Rams last week, and that was a terrible idea. Do I take him this week? Yeah, I'll take the Niners still in this one. That D-line will get after that so injured offensive line group for the Rams.
I'm with you. I'll take the 49ers late at 6.5 on the road. The Lions looking to get win in Arizona against the Cardinals, who looked good offensively last week. Lions 3-point road favorites out in Arizona.
Yeah, great game for Marvin Harrison after some of those concerns in week 1. I will take the Lions.
I'll take the Lions later 3 points. The Ravens looking to avoid 0-3 start. Have to do that in Dallas against the Cowboys. The Ravens are 1-point road favorites against the Cowboys and Dak and company.
A lot of road favorites this week, man. Yeah, Dallas got rolled, but they're so hard to predict. They're the most unpredictable team in football. What kind of team you're going to get on a given week from Dallas? Oh man, Dave, this one is really tough. I'm gonna go Dallas in this one.
I'm going to go Baltimore to get their first win. I'll lay the point there against Dallas. Chiefs on the road against the Falcons. The Chiefs laying 3 points in Atlanta.
Yeah, give me Kansas City.
Give me Kansas City. I'll lay the 3 points with you. Jaguars go on the road against the Bills. Bills favored by 5 at home.
I'll say Bills win. Jags cover in a divisional matchup.
I'll go with you. I'll take Jaguars plus 5 points.
Not divisional matchup. I'm thinking something off there, but I'm still taking Jaguars to cover.
All right, I'll take the Jaguars with you. Give me those 5 points there. Commanders, I think we have two. We have that's one Monday night game. The other Monday night game is the Commanders on the road against the Bengals. The Bengals looking to avoid 0-3 start, laying 7.5 at home against the Commanders.
A large line there. Bengals win. They won't go to 0-3, but the Commanders covered.
Hopefully the Bengals get, for my fantasy team, get Higgins back going this week. I'll take the Bengals late 7.5 at home against the Commanders. That circles us back to Sunday. Steelers hosting the Chargers. This one's now 1.5. This one's bounced around a half point either way here. Steelers now 1.5 point favorites at home against the Chargers. What say you?
Yeah, it's like looking into a mirror, these two teams. I mean, they are really built the same. They have similar ideals, similar ways they've won so far. Obviously, both 2-0 right now, not scoring a ton of points. The Chargers more than the Steelers, but it's really been the similar type of style. I think the two issues in this one I have is trying to stop J.K. Dobbins, which Pittsburgh has always had their issues with. I know it's new defense, and they've looked really good against the run, but Dobbins is really playing well for the Chargers over there. And that, as you mentioned, that Chargers pass rush with Bosa and Mack and everything behind against an offensive line for Pittsburgh that has been better than past years, quicker starts, but still some issues in the tackle situation, a little in flux. So all that said, tight one overall, certainly good reasons to pick Pittsburgh. I'm going to go against the Steelers for the first time this season. I got the Chargers winning this one 20-14.
You're going to be a bad guy. Well,
I am.
I said before the season started that there was one game that I flipped, and it was this one. I had the Steelers losing this one. I got to see the dam break here, and this is a good Chargers defense. I am worried along with you. Can they actually stop the run, and can they play the style of ball control and not turn the football over on offense? I am worried about this one. I'm going to be a bad guy with you, so both of us can hold hands to get the nasty emails, and we're not Steeler fans, and where's the faith? This is a litmus test game for the Steelers here. I wonder if they're going to score enough points. I have the Chargers winning this one 20-17 over the Steelers.
Yeah, so can Pittsburgh win this game? Absolutely. It's going to be close. It's going to be a slugfest, and that is the type of game that Pittsburgh is able to win and wants to play. The Chargers are in the same boat. I do think if what does Pittsburgh have to do to win this game? I think the one real factor could be if Herbert has that ankle injury, which of course he does. If he's limited by that, if that really hinders his ability to make plays with his legs, run away from TJ Watt, etc., extend the play. Will that change the structure of their offense, the way it changed things in Atlanta in week 1? You look at that as well. So that is, I think, Pittsburgh's best path is if Herbert is really hindered, that could definitely change the outcome of this game.
If I looked into my crystal ball right now and I told you, Alex, the Steelers did not turn the football over in this game, and that's the only stat that I'd give you out of this thing, is the Steelers did not turn the football over. Did the Steelers win or lose?
I mean, not historically, but the last 2 years would say they win. They're 15-2 since 2022, and they don't turn the ball over at all. They're 6-13 when they turn the ball over at least once, regardless of turnover differential. Can they go, 3 straight games without a turnover? It's possible, but if you gave me that stat, then I might feel differently. But I feel like this will be the first game where Pittsburgh has had a little bit of luck go the way from avoiding turnovers. Their luck could run out in this one. They may be playing from behind a bit more, a little more pressure in this one. The pressure itself from Mack and Bosa could create some issues. And so I think they probably will give it away at least one time in this game.
All right. I'm with you on that as well, too. All right. Let's, shall we get to some reader emails and close out the show?
Yes, sir.
All right. Jeff writes in, if you were the LA Chargers, wouldn't you sell out to stop the run against the Steelers? Sort of what the Broncos did to us in the second half. If I'm the opposing team, I'm stacking the box, double teaming Pickens, and forcing you to beat me with Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin. Fair point. And as we talked in the preview there, they've normally been a lighter box team, but 2 games in, and they got out in front of the Panthers and changed the mentality of that game there. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea for the Chargers to make sure, look, they're not going to beat us, much like the Steelers are going to try to do them. They're not going to beat us on the ground, and we're not going to let Pickens beat us up over the top. We're going to make Justin Fields either win this with his arm or getting the ball to Pat Freiermuth, Van Jefferson, or Calvin Austin. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to take issue with what Jeff's saying here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get that. Again, I think both teams will have the mentality that we're going to be more physical, we're going to control the trenches, and we're going to win the game that way. It's hard to do everything, though. It's hard to stack the box and double George Pickens. If you're doing that, you're kind of running out of people at that point. Maybe that's in different situations on third down, double George Pickens, that kind of stuff. But, I think Pittsburgh has done a good job. I don't feel like Pickens has really been taken away by the 2 defenses so far. And they played some decent defenses with really good corners in A.J. Terrell and Patrick Surtain II. So I think Pickens will have an easier matchup on the cornerback this week. I think Pittsburgh has moved him around. I just want to make sure he's staying involved. I think Pittsburgh did get away from getting Pickens schemed up more in that second half of that game. So, I'm sure that's the Chargers' game plan, but I think that's been the Broncos and the Falcons' game plan as well, and those things did not quite work out.
All right, Bryce is back. Wants to know if Roman Wilson is a full participant on Friday, then he thinks he's going to play on Sunday. If he does, what passing concepts do you feel the Steelers should run to most take advantage of his strengths? Well, if he dresses and plays, I think he's going to have a muted snap count overall. I'm not expecting him to get a lot of targets overall. Look, some of the things he did well was work in the middle of the field, but we haven't seen the Steelers do a lot of that so far. So I think I think you could at least to get him some touches, you could work him on in some sort of quick game, whether it be screen or an out route or something like that. But other than that, I'm not expecting if Roman Wilson dresses and plays, I'm not expecting a high snap count from him. Can you get him on a nickel or something, Alex, and maybe try to win on a underneath crosser or something vertical down the middle of the field?
Yeah, that'd be my strategy. You're right. You're not going to game plan too heavily specifically for Roman Wilson, but where did he win at Michigan? Some motion, which I talked about, and some over routes, some crossing routes. That's probably his way to get a step on a corner, get out in front, and try to run away with the 4.3 speed that he has. So I don't know if the screen game, I feel like he just goes down kind of easily, and maybe the strength isn't there. I think the Chargers can tackle on the outside. I think they got some guys who can do that. So I think over routes, crossing routes, benders would be his best way to make a play or two.
His other questions here is based on a team right now. If the 2025 draft was tomorrow, he talks about the order he would go and all like that. Bryce, we're in week 3 of the season here, brother. I realize fans want to, while looking at the now, look about it's way too early to talk about 2025 draft right now. Let's save that till later on in the season.
Yeah, I mean, I get the question all the time, but we as you said, Dave, lots of time to talk about all
that. Bruce writes, start losing my voice here. Sorry. Bruce writes in, after seeing how the season has played out so far, do you think it's possible the Steelers drafted Troy Fautano to replace Broderick Jones at right tackle? The assumption, at least from me, was drafting Fautano was to move Jones to left tackle. Didn't Jones practice primarily at right tackle during training camp? The Steelers seem to like Dan Moore. Do I have my tinfoil hat on too tight? I get his overarching thought here is, do we think it's possible they drafted Troy Fautano to replace Broderick Jones at right tackle? Yeah, the short answer is yes, with the idea of getting Broderick Jones to left tackle. But Dan Moore has done everything. Dan Moore has talked about this. All he can control is all he can control, and that's just playing to the best of his ability over to the left side. So Broderick Jones has not done enough to start at either tackle spot right now, and until something really happens to Dan Moore on that other side, Broderick better get used to standing on the sideline quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know what the tinfoil hat part of that is. They once they drafted Fautanu, I mean, they didn't say immediately, but shortly thereafter, they said he's going to play right tackle. So yeah, Dan Moore has been this team's best tackle since training camp opened up. Just straight out. I mean, in terms of like being healthy and available, I mean, Fautanu was flash and they're super high on him, but I mean, Moore has been really steady and had probably his best summer and start of the season he's ever had. So you're just right now playing your two best guys.
All right, Jameson Sterling writes in, hey, Dave and Alex, longtime listener, first time writing the show. Hey, congrats, Jameson. Thank you. So quickly want to say thank you for your hard work, insight, and everything that goes with it. Question, I wanted to ask, as we sit here in September 19th, I'm typing this email ahead of your Friday show. I want to know your guys' gut feeling. Are the Steelers going to end up giving up a 4th or a 6th round pick for Fields? If you made me choose today, I would say a 4th, leaning that way, but I think you guys would maybe agree this week is going to be the highest. What's he trying to say here about?
He's talking about that conditional pick. He's basically saying, do you think Justin Fields will play 51% of the snaps to make that into a 4th round pick next year?
Yeah, because it all revolves around the snap count.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I still feel this is on a week-to-week basis with Fields right now. However, if the dam breaks against this Chargers defense, and you put up more points, they are not in a situation where they have to rush Russell Wilson back, and it still doesn't sound like Russ is close yet, even though Russ will tell you I'm closer, all like that. Where's your gut right now? Does Justin Fields hit the 51% mark? Going into week 2, I was still kind of questionable about that. I still am questionable about that. I am starting to get the feel, though, that they would like to try, if if they think that they can maximize some of the things that Fields does well, and he can continue to progress in these next couple of games against the Chargers and the Colts and all, it's going to be hard to yank him out of there if the offense continues to make progress. So I guess gut right now is somehow, some way, especially with, if you go back to Russell Wilson and his age and already had a backslide once with the calf. I mean, what's the likelihood of that happening again? So long story short, I think there's a good chance that Fields busts the 51% mark.
Yeah, I'm really leaning towards you right now. I mean, I do think week 3 is going to be kind of the thing that tells us if they win and he plays reasonably well, basically the way he's played the first 2 games. How do you bench him at that point? I mean, it's your 3-0. Fields is doing all the things you ask him to do. He plays clean football. He's really worked on all the issues he's had. His snap to throw time is down to 2.9 seconds. That's lower than it's ever been before. Still probably has to get cleaned up, and it's a smaller sample size, and he's played from ahead, but you're seeing improvement in all the areas he's needed to show improvement in. So yeah, I think week 3 will tell us a lot. I just go back to it. I've made this point a bunch already, and so I sound like a broken record, but I feel like I've not articulated the thought well. I think, the reporting is that Wilson has told the team he's healthy enough to play. And so be saying that, even though the team is saying he's not healthy enough, I do wonder what point does Wilson feel like he's been benched? If he feels healthy and he's ready to go and the team is kind of preventing him from taking those steps to get the full practice level and that kind of stuff, at what point does Wilson feel like he's been benched, even before the team maybe makes some sort of final announcement on the quarterback going forward?
Yeah, you can't have it both ways for too long, right? Where Russell Wilson's QB1, but how long can you hide behind he's not healthy enough?
Right. You can play that card for a little bit, like they did last year with Pickett and Rudolph, but eventually you gotta make a call.
And look, before I get to this next email here, we get a lot of questions about Russell Wilson and trading him and all like that. I get all that. There are only 2 ways I seriously consider about trading Russell Wilson.
Can I guess what they are?
Go ahead.
I'll guess if you get like a crazy good offer, or if he asks for a trade.
You got it.
All right. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, you won. You get a year's supply of turtle wax.
I get all the cargo shorts in your closet.
Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat. You get a year's supply of that as well, too, to go with your turtle wax.
This is a reference. It's over my head. I'm not sure what this is in reference to.
So that used to always be the prizes on game shows.
Okay.
Your supply of turtle wax and Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat, and all like that. I'm showing my age here, because look, you don't have anything invested in him, and you never know how injuries are going to go in the NFL. And do you want to trade away a veteran guy that could probably still win some ball games for you just for the sake of trading them away? So there's only 2 ways that I know Alex agrees with me, and that's why he guessed the way I guessed there. There's only 2 ways I trade them away, and a team would be absolutely crazy to give up a 2nd or a 3rd round pick. I feel. Who knows? The later you get closer to the deadline, I suppose, and all like that. That's one way. If I just get an offer I can't refuse for Russell Wilson. And even so, I really question it, especially if I'm in the thick of things as the Steelers at the trade deadline. The other way is if Russell behind closed doors says, guys, Justin's your guy. Well, I know he's your guy. I don't want to cause a stink here.
Mm-hmm.
Get me out of here. Those are the only 2 ways that I consider trading Russell Wilson away. So I've got a lot of emails in here concerning that. It's fruitless until we get closer to the trade deadline to see what this thing looks like to continue to ask that question, I think. But I just want to make sure we got to that because I know we got some emails in here. Dave Rebich.
Jump in just really quickly. If it comes to that point where Fields is announced as the starter and Wilson's healthy, I do want to discuss, would Wilson ask for a trade, but I don't want to go down that road right now. I'm so scared to trade a quarterback. The last time Pittsburgh traded a quarterback was? Do you remember the last time they dealt away a quarterback, especially mid-season? That answer was Josh Dobbs in
right.
2019. And what happened about
Right.
6 days after they traded Josh Dobbs? Ben goes down against Seattle, lost for the season, and they're playing, musical chairs with Duck and Mason the rest of the way, and it's a mess. And so the football gods have a funny way of smiting you for your arrogance about trading quarterbacks sometimes. And if you trade Wilson and Fields goes down, I mean, Kyle Allen is better than, 2019 Mason or Duck, but it's still Kyle Allen. Your season feels like you're not going to win a playoff game with Kyle Allen. And so I mean, if you got a crazy good offer, it's hard to turn down. But even if Wilson says, I want out, I know it's the whole volunteers on hostages thing, but man, you trade Wilson, you're praying that Fields stays healthy the rest of the way.
Right. And it's not like you got a huge salary with him either. So unless it's just outright, he's being, behind the scenes being and even if that started next week or something like that, you got to run this thing up closer to the trade deadline on top of it. And yeah, I'm not a fan of trading away a cheap veteran quarterback that I think can still win me ball games. And especially if I get to the point where I'm at the trade deadline and I'm whatever, I'm right in the thick of things,
Yeah. So anyway, it's all down the road type stuff, but hesitant to trade a quarterback here.
All right, Dave Ravitch, this will be the final one. I had a feeling in the second half of the Mile High game that the Steelers were gassed on offense and defense. I guess I'm crazy because nobody else has brought it up, but two halves couldn't have been more different. Man, the Steelers offense, what did we say? The offense only ran 20-something plays, Alex. I didn't get the feeling they were gassed as much as Denver changed some things up, and the Steelers just couldn't execute on, and we went through the list of about 3 or 4 plays that really could have shaped the second half of that game being a little bit different there. Did you get any feeling that they were gassed on either side of the football? I didn't.
Not defensively. I mean, the Broncos had a couple of pass plays late, but that was them just kind of in catch-up mode. The defense still played really well. Yeah, and offensively, just not enough volume there. I mean, I get the altitude's a factor. It's a young offense overall. I think, when you have just a miscommunication on the snap count on a third down that should be fine with wide open for an easy conversion, that's not a gas or a, catching your wind kind of issue. When you have the holding call on Dan Moore on a converted 3rd and 7, that's not a altitude issue. So I just think Pittsburgh was sloppy and did not have success on first down.
I lied. One more for Trevor here, a name I don't really recognize. Trevor from Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, I enjoy going on road trips to see the Steelers play. Huge Steelers fans. I had driven from Regina to Pittsburgh 3 different times, twice to see the Steelers and once to see the Pirates. I also drove to Kansas City to see the Steelers and Chiefs play. Talked about boy. He says he's driving to Vegas to see the Steelers play on October 13th, which is the Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. Do you know of any Steelers events worth going to? I enjoy listening to your podcast, especially when the Steelers win, he says. Trevor, I'm not an out and about guy at this stage of my life. I will tell you this, though, there is, and I had heard some talk about Noreen's Lounge maybe closing soon or something. I haven't looked into that, but look into Noreen's Lounge on Tropicana. Huge Steelers hangout place and all like that. Maybe call them to see if any events are going on, but it won't be hard when you get to town to find Steeler fans. I'll tell you that. As we've seen in, obviously any visiting city the Steelers go to, and there's a huge section of the Steelers fan base here in Vegas. So it shouldn't be hard to find a place to mingle and mix and all, but I would check with Noreen's Lounge, call them up, Google them and see what they got going on.
You're a much better area tour guide than I am here, so appreciate that.
All right. So with that, Alex and I will be back on Monday, hopefully recapping a 3-0 Steelers team. The Steelers have not started 3-0 since when did we say the last time was 2020, right?
On their 11-0 start.
Right. And so whatever happens, we'll recap it on the Monday show. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, we got an ad-free version of the site. You can find that button upper right navigational bar. Follow the directions that way as well. So until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.